Hello friends, thank you for clicking on this video. Today I have been out in the craft cottage creating up a storm. I cannot wait to show you what I made. Been going through my spindles and I've created some really cute home decor. Let's get started. This came off of a rocking chair that a friend of mine picked up off the side of the road in her neighborhood. It's got this wonderful crackle, big chippy. I'm gonna try to maintain as much of this. I think I'm gonna try to glue this down. We're gonna try to maintain as much of this as possible. We're gonna make a shelf sitter and maybe two-sided. It's beautiful. It looks like it had been painted black, maybe a little blue under there at one time. And we're gonna try to make it two-sided. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? All my chippy friends said yes. I'm gonna try to maybe seal it with something and maybe preserve some of this chippiness if I can. Let's see what we can do. My solution to sealing all of this beautiful crackle in was to grab some big top sealer and give it a good coat. Everywhere that this crackle paint was peeling up, I just used this little fan brush and just smushed it up underneath there as you see me doing here, and then just continued to give this a good thick coat of this big top. And if it didn't want to lay down good, I would just press down with the side of the paintbrush and hold it down for a few seconds. And I have to tell you that this sealed this chippiness in beautifully. Now on the back side, we're going to use the paint inlay by IOD called Spring Medley. These are beautiful spring inlays from the 2025 collection, and I think we're going to use these bunnies. I chose the green ones, and I'm just going to cut out the ones that I wanted. I thought it was going to be easier to try to do this upside down, but because of the way it laid, and I just was confusing my poor little brain. So you'll see here shortly that I chose another solution. I got a couple of old towels that I used in the craft cottage. I rolled them up and put them under it to help them to support it. I do spray my inlays on the paint side and let that paint kind of activate. And then I'm going to give this piece a good thick coat of the big top sealer. Now, usually I would use paint, but I don't want to paint over all that beautiful chippiness. So I'm going to use the big top so I will have a clear solution for the inlay to lay into. So what happens is the paint that is on this paper is activated by either your paint or, in my instance, this big top sealer. And I'm going to lay these wet inlays in here. I'm going to pat them gently. I'm not going to rub. I'm going to pat them gently with a soft towel. Just patting, pat, 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 so that I pat it down into that solution, into that. I've tried to do it with Mod Podge before. I did not have good results. If you've had good results, that's great. We're going to give it some time to dry. We're going to set it, I'm going to use the heat gun a little bit, but mostly I'm just going to set it aside and let it dry. In the meantime, I'm going to get the new IOD bunny mold. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that French word, so I'm going to, it means bunnies. So I'm going to get that out. We're going to put some cornstarch in our mold to keep the air dry clay from sticking. It's just going to pop out so much easier if we do this. I don't want to use too much because I don't want to dry the clay out too much. I'm just going to show you with one bunny that I'm going to press it in firmly with my fingers down into this mold. It does lift out pretty easy, so I'm just going to keep pressing in, and there is a little edge, a little lifted edge on the outside of the image, and it makes it really easy just to press that clay out, and it almost just cuts it away. Now I want to make sure that I get the back of it nice and smooth and even, and I'm using the DOS air dry clay. No, I'm not. I'm using the Peppy air dry clay today. I'm going to make two of them. Make this little crouched bunny, and I'm going to make the standing up bunny. When I'm all done, I'm going to take them, I'm going to put them on the back of this little rocking chair. It wasn't a little rocking chair, it was a big rocking chair, but this is the little piece that I'm working with today. I'm going to apply them with some tight Bond Quick and Thick. I'm just going to apply it to the back. I'm going to use my finger to just smooth it out all the way around. I don't need a thick coat. It needs to just be a nice thin coat, but it does need to go all the way out to the edges because we want to seal the edges in nicely to our piece so that it stays good. I'm going to put it down where I want it, and then I'm going to press gently all around the edges to make sure that I get a nice good seal to my project, because I don't want this thing coming up anywhere. And then I had to smush my little bunny, make it a little fatter so that the ear would not hang over the edge. I'm going to take some gray paint. This is Gravel Road by DIY, and I'm going to give both bunnies 2 good coats. It took 2 coats of this, but I'm going to give it 2 good coats. I am not going to leave these 2 adorable little bunnies gray. I'm going to make them white. I have a very cute little story about 2 bunnies that my grandmother got for her birthday when her 2 boys, my dad and his brother, were little. I'll finish that story, but first I'm going to tell you about this IOD Metallark stamp from IOD from the 2026 spring collection. Has some beautiful stamps in it. I'm going to use those, I forget what they're called now. Oh my goodness. I'm going to use them to try to figure out where I want my stamps to lay. And then I did prime my stamps with a fine grit sandpaper, and then I'm going to just stamp my stamps with some black ink, and then I'm going to gently rub down. Now I have a thick coat of that sealer on there, so it's a slick surface, so I'm not expecting really good coverage, but it's rustic and I don't really need it. This little one transferred really good, but all of these stamps don't transfer really good on this slick surface, and I'm okay with that because I want this to be rustic. Those are called masks. It finally came to me. You can use those masks to get a different effect. If you've seen me use those before on my channel, but I like to use them for placement. So I'm just really wanting this to just lay in there nicely, but I really want it to look old and worn and rustic because that's the look that I like. If you don't like that look, then you can certainly do this same technique on a beautifully painted piece and get your stamps to look really nice and crisp, and you don't have to use a chippy piece of wood. You could do this on a Dollar Tree sign or anything that you want. Now I'm just stamping that around. Now we're going back to the other side. I'm just kind of flip-flopping here on you. And these inlays are completely dry now, and now I'm going to moisten them again and spritz them down. I'm going to wait a few seconds, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 seconds, and then I forgot to hit record when I did the inlay peel. Sorry about that, but this is what it looked like when it was finished. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Turned out so pretty, and you could see that crackle behind the inlay, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Okay, now we're going to go back to the bunnies. I'm going to tell you that my dad and his brother, my grandpa gave them each $1 to get my grandmother a birthday present. And my dad and his brother were probably, I don't know, around 5 and 7 years old. And they were in town. They lived in the country. My grandfather had taken them to town. While my grandfather was in the store, they were on the street. They live in a really small town. And there was a man on the corner selling white bunnies. And because my grandmother's birthday is in March. And so the boys decided they were going to buy Mama 2 white bunnies for her birthday. So that year she got 2 white bunnies for her birthday. And of course my grandfather let them do it. And so that's kind of been a running joke for years and years and years about my grandmother getting the 2 white bunnies. And so in her elder years, she loved for us to get her bunnies for her birthday, like bunny figurines or she had bunnies on her birthday cakes. And we really enjoyed her telling that story every single year on her birthday. So every time I do two bunnies, I think about my grandmother and her birthday. She lived to be 99 years old, by the way. I got this Excelsior grass from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to hot glue a bunch of it down along the bottom. This is just as messy as moss, just FYI. You would not actually even have to do this, because when I styled it to take pictures, I had some greenery, and I just sat it down in the greenery, and it would look just as good. So if you don't want to mess with all of this messy stuff, this moss, this isn't moss, this is like Easter basket grass almost, then you wouldn't have to. You could just set it down in some greenery and it would look adorable. So I just trimmed it up and dusted it off, and I love, love, love the way this turned out. Let me know what you think. Promised you spindles, and here I have spindles. This is a beautiful spindle that came off that same rocking chair, and I'm going to use the Madeline transfer book that came in the 2026 spring release from IOD. I'm going to just cut up some of these transfers. You have seen everyone do this that uses the transfers, any transfers. You can just cut. I'm going to cut some little relief cuts in there because we're using this on a rounded surface. All I did to this spindle was just sand off all that chippiness. Now the chippiness on this was not salvageable. It was really, really chipping off, and I barely had to sand it to get it off. And so we're just going to transfer this. I'm not going to show you all the tedious transferring of this because it is redundant and can be boring. So I'm going to show you that you just press down on this transfer sheet and peel up, and the transfers just stay on your project, and they are absolutely gorgeous. We're going to put florals on the bottom. We're going to put some florals on the top with using that same method, just laying it out there and seeing what I want. And I'm cutting carefully so that I can keep those other pieces because I definitely want to use them. They're way too expensive to be wasteful. So you can see I put florals on the top, florals on the bottom, and then I'm going to throw a couple of these really pretty butterflies. I am so glad that they included some smaller butterflies in this book because I love to add them. And now we're going to go through the chiffon ribbon and look for the color. I'm looking for a color that's going to match good, and I just chose white. It looked pretty with those little daisies down there. And so I had this little small width piece that I had cut up. I'm just going to wrap it around that top. And yeah, like you see me doing there. I'm trying to figure out what I want to be the front. I'm going to make this finger bow. You just wrap it around your fingers, go around. I hold my thumb in there, and then I just tuck it under on top of my thumb, and then pull it up toward my forefinger, and it just makes the cutest little bow, and it's so easy and simple. And then I'm just going to glue it up there to the top. Now you could be done. You could just throw this in a basket, make a little vignette, and you would be finished. I'm going to seal it up with some clear wax by DIY because I love how the oils in this wax make wood get dark, and it just looks beautiful. Look at the difference in the top and the bottom as I'm doing that. I mean, this looks beautiful just as is. You could be done right here. But nope, your girl's going on with more. I have this 4x4 post. It really isn't 4x4. It's more like 3x3. And my husband cut me some slices while he was out in the shop. That was so sweet of him. And then I had this little wood round that was in my stash. And I'm just going to glue the little wood round onto the square because I'm going to drill a hole in it. I'm going to drill a hole in it and drill a hole in the bottom of the spindle so we can use the little dowel rod method to adhere the two together, because the bottom of that spindle is not completely flat, and I don't want this thing going anywhere. I want it to sit as flush as possible, and I don't want it going anywhere. So yeah, I had to really drill that out and using my little tabletop vacuum. I had to hammer it down in there, but this thing is not going anywhere, guys. Then I decided I was going to take one more of those little butterflies and transfer it down on here. Now, I had already waxed this with some clear wax, so it was a little bit of a booger to get it to transfer on, but I did get it to transfer. I would not recommend transferring it over wax. But then I decided to take the dark wax and darken this little bottom piece up a little bit because it had a little too much of a golden tint to it. But this is how it turned out, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. This little spindle had a screw in it and I could not get it out. The head was already stripped, and so I took wire cutters and I worked to try to get that as closely cut off as I could, but it was still very sharp. And I didn't want to cut that tall part right there off because I love the way it looked. So I did a little piece out of resin and I tried to cut a hole in the back to put on there. Just didn't work. So I got my air dry clay out and I put a little piece in there. I just made like a little small medallion from that cross mold, and I'm just going to put it with some Tite Bond quick and thick, and I'm going to put it over that screw where that screw was, so nobody's going to get injured from their home decor. I'm just going to place it over that and press down around the edges. And this is going to be beautiful. Now, I don't really want to paint this per se, but I do want it to have some color. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to do a light paint coat. A heavy dry brush, light paint coat. And I'm going to paint around that very gently because I don't want to, around that mold, because I don't want to distort all the beautiful details. But then I'm going to take this chippy brush and I'm going to give this a very heavy dry brush or a very light coat of white paint. And then I'm going to take a fan brush and I'm going to go in with some weathered wood or any kind of brown paint would work, and I'm going to dry brush over that medallion so it kind of looks like it belongs there. And then I decided the bottom was a little bit lighter than the top part, so I just thought that if I used a little bit of that weathered wood all over, it would kind of tie it all in together. I'm going to take the Dixie Belle clear wax, sorry that was not in focus, and my makeup brush, and I'm going to wax it. I'm not going to put wax on the bottom because typically if you wax, the glue doesn't really stick. It kind of repels the glue. I'm going to be really careful over that, waxing it because it wasn't quite dry yet. Now I got these little wood pieces from Hobby Lobby in that wood pile when it was on 40% off, and there's quite a few. I think there were 4 different shapes. I've already used all the rectangles, but there was rectangle, square, oval, and round, and I'm going to use one of them as a base for this. I'm going to try to decide. I liked them all. I love how all of them looked, but I settled in on the oval. I liked it the best. So I'm just going to take some Dark and Decrepit by DIY. You know I love to use this as a stain. I'm going to get a sponge brush. I'm just going to sponge it on all over. I'm using a glove because my hands are so dry that this stuff will get in my little dry skin and it will be hard for me to clean off. So it's easier for me just to wear a glove. And then I'm going to take just a little paper towel and wipe back, dab back, pat back a little bit of the excess off there. Once it's dry, I'm going to take a fan brush or a chippy brush and just dry brush some white on there, pretty heavy, just so it sort of matches our spindle. It doesn't have to match perfectly, but I don't really want it to look like it's one cohesive piece. I just want it to, you know, kind of coordinate. I'm going to dry it with the heat gun so it'll, you know, speed it along. And we're going to use that same method. I'm going to use my little center punch. But this spindle, I had kind of ripped it off. It wouldn't come out of the
off of the rocking chair very easily. So I had kind of ripped it off, and so it's not flat on the bottom. And I could not get that drill to go in the center, so it's a little off-centered, and I don't care. I really don't care. And then I'm going to drill a hole in that oval. And I thought, well, I'll put it off-center too, but I wasn't really smart enough to get it in the off-center right to make it right. So you're going to see it turns out fine. So we're going to use that same method. We're going to put a little dowel stick in there. I used the skewers from Dollar Tree, and yeah, glue it all down, stick it in there. I had a little trouble getting that one in, but you can see it's a little off-center, but I don't really care. It doesn't really bother me. Okay, you see that hole in the top? No worries, my friends. Don't worry. We're going to put some cute little spring florals in there. How cute is that? Okay, let's put some chiffon ribbon around the top. I'm going to cut this in half. I'm going to just split it down the middle, and then I'm going to pull a few strings so we can fray that edge so that it looks like the other edge. I'm just going to tie it right around the top at the base of those little florals that I stuck in there. I've had those florals in my stash for so long. They're actually made out of paper, the actual flowers are, and the greenery part, it feels like it's very spongy. I don't know what it's made out of, but they're so cute. I think I may have gotten those at Joann's like 3 years ago. I've had them for so long, but they're so cute. I'm just going to tie this in a little knot, and this one is complete.
Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Please give it a thumbs up. Drop a comment in the comment section down below. Even if you just leave me an emoji, I love to know that you are here. But most of all, I want you to remember to be still and know that He is God.